Welcome, everybody. You're listening to WCEG Take a Stand. My name is Reverend Diane Dougherty, and I'm delighted to have you here for this incredible conversation we're going to have with two activists who are working to change the landscape of Atlanta. You are listening to WCEG Network on WCEG Talk Radio. We are the Worldwide Communication Empowerment Group. You can watch us live on your smart TV, YouTube, Facebook, and one of the things that we do on WCEG is we speak life into the community. These two people are doing this at this present time. We'd like you to like us on Facebook if you could, and also to subscribe to our network. You can also follow us on Twitter. One thing we would like you to know is, you can also like us on, find us on Instagram at WCEG_talk_radio and at WCEG Network. And last but not least, this is a disclaimer that the topics and opinions of those who are our show hosts and their guests are not those of WCEG. And we thank you for our your continued support. So with us today, we have two people. We have the wonderful Donna Stevens, whom I met through the work that I had heard of the Chattahoochee Brick Company, and Bob Kent, who is a resident of the area. And I've heard a lot about him because Saturday I went to the celebration of the Chattahoochee Brick Company ceremony. It was a sacred ceremony to reclaim the land. It was very beautifully done. And that was the first time I heard Bob speak. You did well, a good job, Bob. I'm so glad you could be on with us today. Donna,
yes.
I had met Donna at one of the first events that drew my attention, and that was an event that rose awareness of the issue related to the Chattahoochee Brick Company. And since that, I have been reading, investigating, and calling Donna and calling Donna and calling Donna to get more information. I'm also a member of the Concerned Black Clergy, and they have invested with many other African American communities in this area to raise awareness of what is happening. So Donna, could you start us out kindly by, well, first of all, I'd like to tell everyone this is a two-part series. This week, we will talk about the Chattahoochee Brick Company and give a basic overview of what the issues are. And the next week, on April 19th, when we do part 2, we will expand that awareness and talk about what is going on and how all of the listeners can help us out. So Donna, give us a little bit about your background, and then we'll bring Bob into that, because okay. I believe she is the chairperson of the Proctor Creek Stewardship Committee, and yes. That's how you became aware of the issues related to this.
Well, I'm a native Atlantan, and so I've heard stories about Chattahoochee Brick Company growing up, but the more modern, era. And I'm also, being a member of the Proctor Stewardship Council, I became a member of Groundwork Atlanta on the board. Bob and I served together at one time. And the announcement was made that they were going to redevelop Chattahoochee Brick Company site, and it was going to be an heavily industrialized biofuel center. And my gut reaction was, this can't be. This can't be. And Bob and I had several conversations, and we knew that something had to be done. And we joined forces, and we haven't stopped. And that was back in 2016. And we've had people, you know, align with us and partner with us throughout this period. And so Saturday was a wonderful occasion for both of us.
I'd like to tell the listeners that the Chattahoochee Brick Company is a 75-acre piece of property on Bolton Road, and it is between both of your properties. You, Donna, lives in English Park, for those that know the area, and Bob lives on the other side in Whittier Creek?
Whittier Mill Village.
Whittier Mill. So Bob, tell us a little bit about yourself. How'd you get involved in all of this? Why did you get involved in all of this?
That's a good question. I got to know Donna. Donna's a bit of a troublemaker. And, she made a very compelling case, and I didn't really understand it, and then started looking into it and did some reading. And I, quite frankly, was horrified by the history of Chattahoochee Brick. And then it was actually some folks in my neighborhood who heard about the purchase of the property by the Lincoln Terminal Company, and then worked with Donna and some other folks to stop it the first time. The second time, we had another fella who just used to walk his dogs over there, who talked to some security guards and found out that Norfolk Southern had taken over from Lincoln Terminal, and it was actually Norfolk Southern that was going to use its railroad authority to bypass the city and build this huge tanker terminal right down on the site of the Chattahoochee Brick convict leasing atrocity, and in really a very environmentally sensitive area at the confluence of Proctor Creek and the Chattahoochee. And it was there was one terrible tragedy occurred already there, and this would have been a second. And Donna was ready to go, and I just felt compelled to help her. And we've been doing this for about 4 years now.
Bob, would you do me a favor?
Yes, ma'am.
Pull your screen down a little bit so we can see your face. Oh yeah, your beautiful face. There you go. Now we got the good picture of you.
Yeah, I was not prepared to go visual.
Neither was Donna. I'm glad I called her. Sorry about that, but we really appreciate you coming. So one of the things that I do is I interview activists, and I try and pull out from them what was the cognitive dissonance that got you involved. And you just gave such a clear description of a cognitive dissonance. It's in our head, and when we hear something, it moves from our head to our heart. And you can't sit still. You have to make an effort, because if you don't, it follows you. It follows you. It follows you. So Donna, you moved from the environmental issue into the issue of placing all of those big all the big changes that would have come to the Chattahoochee Brick Company. When did you find out the history of James English and the convict leasing program?
Actually, that was years before I even became involved with the environmental field. it was just a regular Saturday. My sister and I were channel surfing, and we came across Slavery by Another Name documentary, and we watched it. And even though we grew up in English Park, we never knew who our neighborhood was named after. And that piqued an interest that we both passionately started, researching who is this person, and after seeing Slavery by Another Name, we were introduced to him, but we went dug deep to find out exactly who is this man and how could he have done these things. And it was horrifying to know that not only do we live in a neighborhood named English Park, but we also have a park in the center of our neighborhood named after Captain English, Mayor English. He wore many hats, so that was a daunting moment. And then a few years later, I became an environmentalist, and that really struck a chord. So it was a double punch.
There you go. Not what we expect in our senior years. But what she's talking about is this book, Slavery by Another Name, and it's by Douglas Blackman. And the movie is a documentary by PBS. I have purchased the DVD from I think Amazon. There aren't that many left. There aren't that many copies of it left, but it would behoove all of us to have my supporter here, our supporter. It would behoove us to have a repeat of that, especially at this time, if PBS would do it.
Right.
And also to reinvest in maybe streaming the movie, if we could do that. Because once I saw the movie, all of this made sense. I'm like you. I knew James English, and I did know the history that he was the mayor, because in second grade, as a matter of fact, we teach in social studies. We teach the history of Atlanta, and also we moved from the area, the Native Americans who lived here, into how Atlanta became Atlanta after the Civil War, or before the Civil War, and how it was the center was in Milledgeville, which was called Helena, and it moved into this area because there was more railroad access. So he was a great entrepreneur and had a vision far beyond most of the people of that age. So as mayor, just for 2 years, that's when the brick company became very advantageous for the development and redevelopment of Atlanta. So Bob, do you know, you studied all of this. Do you know, could you tell us a little bit about James English from your perspective? And what are the highlights of the actions that he did that really gave you cause and concern?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's the key question. He was a very, very powerful person. He was mayor for 2 years, but he was police commissioner for 20.
Oh.
And it was really in that latter role that you really have to say that he corrupted the entire correction system. And skewed it or led it to provide him and others who were business associates basically free labor from convicts, from leased convicts. And this is something that happened throughout the South, as is documented in Mr. Blackman's work of extraordinary scholarship. But it was real bad at Chattahoochee Brick. It was also bad at a place called Georgia Iron and Coal up a little bit to the north. And these these companies, the railroad, there was railroad involved, there was a number of factories, there were mines, there were farms, there were plantations. They produced a lot. In the case of Chattahoochee brick, they produced about 250,000 bricks a day, which rebuilt the city. And they also produced extraordinary profits, which seeded some of the other great companies that James English and Joel Hurt and others were involved in. And these included the streetcar company, which was the antecedent to Georgia Power. It included, I believe it was the Fourth National Bank of Georgia, which became part of SunTrust and Truist. I think the First National Bank, which became part of Wachovia and then Wells Fargo. And then even Coca-Cola. So the Chattahoochee Brick Company and its output, the bricks and the profits, played a major role in the development of Atlanta as a powerhouse southern city. And it's really an extraordinary story. The sad and tragic part of it is that it was built not on just the entrepreneurial strength and in many ways courage of James English, but it was also built on the backs of convict lease workers, many of whom died on the site, were grossly mistreated, really were treated worse than slaves. It's a horrific story. And
when I went to that first meeting that CBC invited me to, and Doug was there, he was giving out copies, 5 pages, back to back, 30 names on each page.
Yep.
Of the names of the people that were brought into the brick company for just it's either 1 month or 1 week. And it gives the names, the dates, the ages. So many of them were even under 16 years old. I was very upset when I read that, because after, or as he was talking, and I'm reading these names, they were saying that a lot of times once you were in the at the brick company, you never came out, that they incarcerated you, reincarcerated you, and you didn't have to have a crime. It could be from standing around, it could be from looking someone in the face. They used trumped up charges.
Yes.
So these are our ancestors. These are my ancestors. These are white people that made these laws for the benefit of us.
Well, there were some white prisoners too, but just a small percentage.
Right.
Yeah, it's really mostly young Black men. There are some women, there are some whites, but yeah, that's really what it was. I think the general term was vagrancy. People were picked up for vagrancy.
Yes.
And actually, you know, I think after a while they were looking for people, and it was a machine. It was an extraordinary machine.
I make a connection between this and the incarceration of African Americans in the school to prison pipeline. And it seems to me that this is I call it morphing. It's a system that morphs itself from age to age. And I look at how many prisoners there are, and also the money that these private prisons are making. I read an article that said private prisons make an agreement with the state that they need to have 96% of their beds filled. And if they don't, the state will still pay them that amount. Well, where are they going to get the people to fill up those beds? I mean, it's not rocket science. And there aren't that I mean, it's targeting a certain area. It's targeting poverty. It's making poverty to target poverty.
Yes, yes.
I'm not sure I can agree with you on that. I don't think it's the same thing. I don't think it has an antecedent in convict leasing. I think it's something that developed separately, and I don't think it's the same thing. But yes, I agree there are problems.
It's not the same thing. It just follows a path. It follows the path of grabbing people and putting them. It's a target on their backs. Instead of creating a system that allows them to raise themselves up as good citizens. But Donna, I wanted to ask you a little bit about, you have been into Proctor Creek and I mean into the Chattahoochee Brick Company, and you too, Bob, I believe. Do you live right around that area? I think I know where your subdivision is. Can you tell me if the entire Chattahoochee Brick Company area now is cut off by a fence? Is it all fenced in?
It is.
All 75 acres?
Well, it was fenced in by Norfolk Southern as they started work on the terminal.
Oh.
And quite frankly, it was going to be finished. There was an awful lot of heavy equipment down there, and a lot of earth had been moved. There's a lot of work been done. It's rather extraordinary that it stopped. And Donna, we had appealed to the city government. The city government acted. We'd appealed to enlightened businesses, but nothing really happened. Nothing really stopped it, quite frankly, until the clergy got involved.
Really?
Until Derek Bozeman, Reverend Tim McDonald, and the Concerned Black clergy got involved and claimed it as essentially a spiritual and religious issue. And that's when something happened.
So how long had you been advocating for this to for them to cease and desist?
We've been advocating.
Donna, when did you start?
I think it was 2016 when we, formally began this work. But Bob and I have never laid down and rested. We had our moments. We appealed to various groups. We wrote letters. We talked to people. We tried to enlighten our fellow neighbors and others, residents, about Chattahoochee Brick Company. And like he said, after Christmas, the snowball started rolling, and we haven't been able to keep up. And we're just thankful for the Concerned Black clergy and Derek Bozeman for amplifying our voices. Again, we've appealed massively, and I'm still a strong supporter of educating individuals because so many people don't know about convict leasing.
Oh,
So
I didn't
forget
know
about knowing about Chattahoochee Brick Company. It's almost as if schools now, they teach you the end of the Civil War, and we pick up with the Civil Rights era with Dr. King, and there's a void there. And I think that we need to understand that there was a Reconstruction period. There was a promise of 40 acres and a mule. There was, lynching and convict leasing and all those atrocities, but there were also great things that happened as well. So, why that void exists, I don't know, but we really need to address that. We really need to address our entire education system in America, period. But, I often wonder, what are children learning if they aren't learning history?
Well, I was amazed when I came to Atlanta, to the public school system in 2000. And 3, and I ended up teaching the entire history. They redid the history requirements or codes, and in the second, fifth, and eighth grade, we did all of the Georgia history, and our second graders had to focus on Native Americans. I was shocked. The early arrival of it as a colony and the amount of really peaceful gatherings that both Native Americans, they said they didn't want Georgia to become like the other colonies. They really wanted to have it set on a fair basis and a good basis. So there was trade and building that went on throughout Georgia. However, when the president, Andrew Jackson, found out there was gold in the hills of Dahlonega, that changed everything. And that's where the Trail of Tears came in. In the second grade curriculum, I don't even know if in the Civil War there's any discussion about slavery, especially Reconstruction. So, but I think that was a good start for me, because as I placed my feet on this ground, I understood that how much it meant to the Creek and the Cherokee in the area, and what a loss they felt and still feel, their loss of land and position. And it's the same thing with African Americans. They built it, but they have no ownership. So the story repeats itself in all of our stories. It's everybody's story. And the story of in the documentary, it is so beautiful, because in the they have special features, and in the special feature, Doug interviews the descendants of James English. And I don't know if you saw that, but
no, I haven't seen that. I saw the original copy, not the
17-year-old niece, and they live in Jackson, Georgia. So she talks about how this would be the great niece of James English, and she says we just admired him and have learned so much about all the good that he did, which he did do a lot of good, but we had no idea how all that, at what price that good was wrought. Until her daughter did a study and dug up all that information and gave a report. And she said, the daughter was saying, she was 17 years old, and she said one of the kids who was listening to it said, "Why are you even telling these terrible things about your grandfather and your uncle? Why would you even say it? Just keep it a secret." And she said, no. She said, no, we all have to know this. And it gave me great cause, because we stand on the shoulders of people who have not done good things. We stand on the shoulders of people who have pushed and worked to really create something that is beautiful and good for all of us. And that's what I think about the two of you. We're called to action, to do something, to reclaim and remake something that needs to be reconciled. And that's what you're doing. So I'm really in tune with both of you. I call you my teachers, my mentors for the Chattahoochee Brick Company.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it's a very complicated story.
It is extremely, and you can demonize one side, you can demonize the other, but that doesn't get us anywhere. We have to look at the facts, have to see where they are, have to say, well, some of this was not right. And who's doing the reparations? Is that you, Donna, or is that you, Bob?
Not me.
That would be me. Bob and I are polar opposites on everything but Chattahoochee Brick Company. We, yes, I have joined forces with the National African American Reparations Commission and Funds for Reparations now. And one of the reasons why is because with them, reparations, people typically think money, land, those types of things. But reparations can also be things like reconciling Chattahoochee Brick Company and giving honor to sacred sites. And that is one of their pillars. Is pillar, I believe it's pillar number 9, where that is part of their mission, is to save sacred sites. So, and it's amazing how many preservation groups there are in Atlanta who want to preserve various buildings, sites, monuments, or even if those things are no longer tangible, they still want to put a marker there. So you have quite a bit of people, not just because of environmental concerns, but cultural concerns as well.
I agree with Donna 100% about that.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. There's a history of it as well. It's
Oh, yeah.
it's interesting that the Douglas Blackmon's primary source of information for his book was hearings held by the Georgia legislature, which is the institution that really put a stop to convict leasing.
And that was 1909, right?
Yep, they just got fed up. They got fed up with it. And it was too much. And so it was, that's really where most of the horror stories came out. It was in testimony to the legislature. And but still, of course, it didn't stop right away. It's,
I was reading an article from someone at Southern Polytechnic who did a piece on it, and they said,
Daniel Scott.
Yes, it was
He's
great.
a friend of mine.
Is he really? Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to listen more to him. He had his students do a lot of research also. And what struck me was James English was quite upset during that time because he said, you mean, first of all, we're going to have to pay them and they won't be able to work from morning until late at night. And I have to give them hours. He said, we'll never make bricks again.
Yeah.
He said, well, isn't that the story of so many today?
that was a bad scene. They were using a 17th century technology. It was an old, outdated technology at Chattahoochee Brick. So in order to make it work economically, they just had to drive the people into the ground.
Well, yes,
bad business.
Maybe we could talk a little bit about that right now too, drive people into the ground. The bodies of many are buried on that property. Although the Norfolk and Southern said they did a survey and there are no bodies there.
Well, I think the survey was done at the behest of Lincoln Terminal prior to the involvement of Norfolk Southern.
Oh, I see.
I think the Norfolk Southern story, I think Norfolk Southern got into something. They didn't realize what they were getting into. I think they made a mistake, and I think they realized they made a mistake, and that's why they pulled out so quick. But Lincoln Terminal had a survey done. They didn't find any evidence of bones, but then in acidic soil like that, you wouldn't find any after 150 years. But there's a fellow named Dr. Richard Becker who did a lot of work. He actually rescued some documents from the brick company before it was torn down. And it showed the location of a temporary cemetery. There's no question but that people died on the property. And there doesn't seem to be any evidence whatsoever that they were moved someplace else. So if they were moved, where were they moved to? Where are they now? I think your contention that there are people buried on the property is without question true, but we just don't know where they are, and
Don't know where they are.
not yet any evidence of bones.
Oh yes, and there are quite a few um, people asking about archaeological studies as well, because if people live there any amount of time, certainly there would be some kind of evidence that people live there. You know, archaeologically speaking, it could be as simple as a dish, a cup, uh, a wheel wagon, something that said people were there. And that would be an important piece to to important piece of the puzzle, you know, to know how they lived or any. I mean, the wagons, they definitely had to have some kind of housing. What happened to that? What happened to, you know, the simple things, the tools they use?
And surely someone has pictures.
Oh yeah, they're pictures, but just
Of-
to have the artifacts themselves would be invaluable, I think.
You
And
haven't seen any pictures of the housing or of the cemeteries.
I saw a map that was on one of these sites, and it showed that it was it was a very large complex.
Mhm.
So, Bob, have you lived in your house long enough to have been there for any part of this Chattahoochee Brick Company complex being opened?
Yes, yeah, I moved here in 2000, and at that time, General Shale was still running the plant. And they
What
used
did
to
they
give
make?
bricks away.
They made bricks?
Yeah, made bricks, and they used to give them away to some of the neighbors. My front walk is paved with bricks from General Shale.
No kidding.
Yeah,
Whittier Mill was was a depository of bricks. That some of their buildings on the property and the park that probably were built with those bricks. They're
the whole
pretty
plant
old.
was built with those bricks. It was the Whittier Mill was a mill that produced cotton fire hose. It was built in 1895, and it burned down, and the bricks were pretty well scavenged. Some things are still there, and then a bunch of old 1890s houses were built at the same time to house the workers who were brought in from the hills of North Georgia. There's a lot of history around here.
I'm fascinated by it. I had no idea. Voluntarily? Did they come voluntarily?
Oh yeah, yeah, it was good work.
It was good work.
Basically, people coming out of the hills, hill people, Appalachians, brought down. This was an entirely Caucasian neighborhood up until just a few years ago. It's a pretty tough place. A lot of people were pretty rough.
Love it. Love it. Love it. So is your side of the railroad tracks gentrifying?
It is. Yeah, we've only got one of the old mill families left, and most everybody's, it's been yuppified, you might say. We have a few black families, and then next door, the next neighborhood over, which was also a brick plant called VOC, Vinings on the Chattahoochee, is very much an integrated
Oh,
neighborhood.
you're by Vinings. Oh.
We call
Well,
it
they
Vinings.
use
It's
the
a little-
title Vinings. It's not.
Yeah, we're taking a little
Historic
license here by
Vinings.
calling it Vinings.
It's not historic Vinings, as my sisters and I say.
But yeah, it's a very dynamic area, and this thing would have been a disaster for all of us. Not it. It was making everybody sick to think that this was going to happen, that they were going to end up putting an oil terminal on top of these bones on this burial ground and pollute the river. I mean, it was both.
See, I think, Bob, you hit the nail on the head. People don't really have words for it, but the overall umbrella is it injures our humanity
That's yes,
And
exactly.
justice to humanity. I don't care what your political affiliation is, whether you don't have any, your religion or whatever. If we can't see ourselves as humans first, and from that humanity, build a society that works for us all, then we're going the wrong direction.
Yep.
So it's wonderful that this was pulled out of you. And Donna, on your side of the Bolton Road,
Yes.
is your side of Bolton Road gentrifying also?
You could say we're beginning to feel housing prices have exponentially risen in the last couple of years. It's amazing how much houses are selling for and have been bought in our neighborhood.
When you're thinking of creating developing the 75 acres, I saw a map where there was affordable housing, there's a park, there's an environmental field where kids can go and learn about the environment, clean air, fresh air, clean water. I thought it was a beautiful idea. Will any of these monuments or these reparations or these efforts end up being a monument to what you were, and African Americans will just have to move out of the area in order to maintain a livelihood? And so you're left with this little plaque.
Well, I'm gonna go wide with this. There is, I call it the gentrification train, and it's coming in all directions. It's not just the possibility of what the Chattahoochee Brick Company site will be, but you also have to pay attention to the new Microsoft campus that's coming up.
Oh.
At the beginning of the Proctor Creek Greenway near the Bankhead Martyr Station. Housing in Vine City and English Avenue and the Bankhead neighborhoods and Grove Park are $300,000, $400,000, $500,000. And some of this housing hasn't even begun construction. And it's coming down that corridor, the Donald Lee Howell corridor, at a rate. And I've been in meetings where they basically say, if you own your property, do not sell, because if you sell too early, then you lose out. And then the other thing is, where else will you live? Because we know the east side those prices are even higher than the west side. So where would you end up living affordable housing is defined by the developers and not the actual people who will be living there. And we all know that it's a challenge for low to moderate income people to have housing as it is now. So that's the fear. So if we don't pay attention to the development of the Chattahoochee Brick Company site, we already know that Microsoft has its, developers have already started, that housing. And it's not that far from the Chattahoochee Brick Company site. So with the prices coming down that corridor, who knows what's going to happen? And like I said, in my neighborhood, the prices are really coming up there.
Talk a little bit about the renter issue in your area.
Well, I live in the Proctor Creek watershed, and housing in that watershed, it's one thing when you know that there are a lot of renters in your area, your community, but when you see it in black and white, it's different. And so over 70% of the people who live in the watershed rent. And that's 38 neighborhoods on the west side of Atlanta. And that starts at the Vine City English Avenue neighborhood, and it ends just beyond, right around where Bob and I live. So 38 neighborhoods, some of them are small, some of them are huge. And that's a problem. If you have 38 neighborhoods where 75% of the occupants are renting, what happens to them?
A renter nation.
Because even let's say you don't want to buy a house, but you do want to rent. The average rent in Atlanta right now is over $1,200 a month.
Well, you should be in Decatur. You can get a 728 square foot condo apartment, $2,250 a month.
Wow.
I know, who could afford it? I'm in the state of shock, but you know, the issue of being a renter nation is really an issue.
Yes.
And I know we're almost coming up to the end of this, so I don't want to, as long as I have a little bit of time, I want to talk about WCEG as a empowerment radio and the shows that they have on it. They have 2 shows on wealth building
Okay.
that I think are really, really important, because people who are poor believe they will always be poor. And so they spend all their money. I don't know if you read Ruby Payne's book.
No, I'm not familiar with that.
It's very insightful. Framework of Poverty. The framework of poverty is that if you're poor, you spend your money because you know you're not going to have anything in the future. So spend it now. We have to do something to help change the mindset of this renter nation, these groups of people that are coming in. And we have to help our children see that developing wealth is a value, and teach them how to do it and how to keep it.
Yes.
Because
yes.
yeah, how do you keep it? So I give my wealth to my children and they spend it within 3 years. They have nothing.
Well, you know, there's documentation that says if you're born into poverty, there's a 4% chance that you'll ever leave poverty. That there's a 96% chance that you'll remain in poverty if you're born into poverty. And
we can change that. We can change that. But Atlanta has the highest income inequality of any city in the nation.
Yeah.
And when we were doing a study of schools, if you're born in certain zip codes, you will, with 5th generation, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th generation are born into poverty, and the kids don't know how to get out of it. Look at our school system. Do we teach them anything about getting out of poverty? And you try and get out of poverty when the homes there are $300,000. And you're working on minimum wage. So all of these systems work one into another, and we have to look at the whole picture. So I think the Chattahoochee Brick Company is an opportunity, first of all, to look at how wealth was made and used, and how do we change the formula? How do we change that formula of domination, power, and wealth to break it down? And I'm not talking about socialism. I'm just talking about how do we raise up generations of people to share in the wealth that all of us have enjoyed? And how do we help them to understand, how can we keep this? Because it is for the good of society, it's for the good of all of us, that we all have an opportunity to thrive, and that no one makes the other person the bearer of oppression for my own power, building my own power and wealth. So what do you say, Bob Kent? What do you say about the future within the next 6 months or a year, what would you like to see in terms of the movement of the Chattahoochee Brick Company and what we want to get out? What do you want to get out of it? If you had the biggest dream that could come true for that piece of property and your own community, what would you like to see?
I think you've really put your finger on it, Reverend. I think that's one of the great challenges of our time. And I think we do have an opportunity with the brick plant to as a part of reparations, to raise all these serious questions and then to adjudicate them in the process of development of the site. I think there also probably needs to be some commercial development there. It needs to be turned into a good destination site, because that would make the memorial to convict leasing and the address of the larger problems. It would make it a viable site and a place for discussion. We want this to be turned into, it was a tragedy. It was a horrific place. It was an atrocity. We want it to be turned into a place of grace and a place of intelligent thought, discussion, and hopefully a good place.
Change. Good for you. I like that. What about you, Donna? Big dreams come true 1 year from now.
Big dreams come true. The memorial has to be befitting of the atrocities. So as bad as it was, I want the memorial to be equal or better than what happened there. Thousands of men, women, and children were victims there, and very few of them came out of it alive. What it would look like, I have no idea. I Google things and I look at things and projects and I see this and I see that and I'm like, okay, well, maybe this would be good and maybe that would be good. So I don't have a clear vision as to what it would look like, but I know what I don't want, I don't want that sole marker or bench, or as another friend of mine said, tree. I want, and I know these things cost money. And I also wanted to, like Bob, a destination, somewhere where people can go and give honor and respect to the people who were there. Because if we don't, then that's another chapter of a history book that remain closed. And people, it's amazing how many people come up to us and tell us they don't know anything about convict leasing. And that's, that's John Doe down the street. That's, Dr. such and such. It's people from all walks of life. They have no idea what convict leasing was. Forget about what Chattahoochee Brick Company was. They have no idea that it even existed. So I would like to educate individuals. That's one of my main incidences. I'm glad you brought that up about the environmental, component to the site, because again, the Chattahoochee River and Proctor Creek are in peril environmentally. They are listed on several lists as in danger of being safe. If you look at some of the signs along Proctor Creek here in Atlanta, they're warning signs. Do not get in the water. Do not touch the water. And those types of things. And that's why there is a Proctor Creek Stewardship Council and a Chattahoochee River Keeper nonprofits, because someone has to keep a watch over them, along with EPA and other people. But those grassroots organizations and nonprofits invest heavily in that particular zone.
You guys are wonderful. I would like to carry on this conversation on April 19th, same time, 2:00, and expand it. I would like everybody to know you're listening to Donna Stevens, who is the chairperson of the Proctor Creek Stewardship Council,
Yes.
and Bob Kent, who is a member and just a very interested advocate for the development of something good at the Chattahoochee Brick Company 75-acre plan. I myself am a member of Concerned Black Clergy because I'm concerned and clergy. I'm not Black, if you didn't notice. but I really appreciate people like you that use your voice, use your words to bring people like me to think and feel about something that's much bigger than ourselves, and also to go back in history to say we're standing on the shoulders of someone that did something that wasn't so good. And maybe it's up to us to make reparations by doing something, as Bob says, better than was done before. And that's what we hope will happen. You're listening to WCEG, Take a Stand. I'm Reverend Diane Dougherty. And WCEG is the worldwide community empowerment group. We really appreciate both of you for coming on. And if you have any last words that you'd like our viewers to hear, we'll hear from you first, Bob.
Yeah, keep an eye on it. The deal is going down now. It's good. I think the clergy stepped in, and now the powers that be are stepping in. Quite frankly, the price is being negotiated with Lincoln Terminal as we speak. Something's going to come out of this. And the more people pay attention, the more people show up as they did Saturday. Anybody who gets involved in this thing is going to be very helpful, and will be thanked, and will be proud to have played a part in it.
Yes, yes. And I just Donna alerted me to the Atlanta Journal and Constitution, and I'll put the website there so you can see some of the pictures from from that wonderful event on Saturday. Donna?
Oh, thank you. Thank you. That's one of our shining moments. Well, I'd just like to say that Bob and I welcome anyone and everyone who shares our passion. No job is too small, no job is too large. Whatever contributions you'd like to make, we're basically a grassroots organization right now, but we're working on improving that status. And I could be contacted at pcstewardship@gmail.com. My phone number is 404-438-5930. If you have any additional questions. And I hope to meet and see you soon. It was Saturday was overwhelming, and so many people wanted to discuss, Chattahoochee Brick Company with me. So I'm open. I'm all ears. And
word is getting out.
Word is getting out. And if you know anything about Chattahoochee Brick Company, share that with your family and friends, and hopefully we'll have a domino effect, and more people will know.
Get the book, Slavery by Another Name. Start a study group. This is a real thing that has happened. Mm-hmm. And maybe take a trip out to Bolton Road and look through the fence. Look through the fencing. You can actually feel the bones. I left a little sign up there that says, "These bones shall rise." But
that was you.
That was you.
I was wondering who put that there.
Because I think that's what we're doing.
Oh, yes.
We're raising the bones. They're not here, but they have left. They're pulling this out of us.
Right.
They're pulling
Right.
this out of us, and it is not a Black problem. It is all of our
Yep.
issue, and we can't overburden the community that was burdened. We need to pull some of that burden, take it on ourselves, and do what we have the power to do. So I thank both of you for coming on. This has been just a wonderful conversation here, wonderful interview.
Thank you for having us.
Take care of yourselves.
Yes.
Take care of yourselves, because you are the only things we've got, and we need you.
Okay.
Thank you, Reverend.